I'm back! Alright, after my long hiatus of being lazy and not posting anything, I'm back. So let's go over the best tips and tricks I've found over my motorized bike kit adventures when installing brand new engines and the kit. So let's just get straight into this. Before anything else, make sure your workplace is clean and tidy. It's okay, I don't know what you'd call this. I've got a little workbench set up here because the other workbench is, well, yeah, covered in crap. Keep your workplace nice, clean, and tidy. This is gonna save you so much time. So yeah, before you do anything, get your tools already ready and just make it easier on yourself before anything happens. Here are some things that you might want to consider purchasing before actually installing one of these kits. So this is a bicycle chain breaker, not meant for the 415 chains that these things come with, but it does work for what I need it to do. So here of course is some super glue that I'll get into later in the video. So you'll definitely want some of that, and of course the Savior Loctite. You cannot build this kit without that Loctite. You might be able to get away with it without the super glue. Probably not this, but definitely do not try to install one of these kits without Loctite. Loctite is your friend. Use it for everything. It's better to put a bolt on a little bit too loose and over Loctite than too tight and not enough Loctite, because it is made out of Chinesium. This entire kit is super cheap parts, so this is your best friend. All right, so right off the get-go, you want to grab your twist grip and handlebar grip and open them up. All right, so we're actually going to be taking some super glue or crazy glue. I just realized that I ran out of that super glue, so we're going to use crazy glue instead. Here's what it looks like, almost identical. You're actually going to want to pretend you're welding, make a bead of glue all the way around this plastic in here. And if you'll ever notice, if you've ever ridden a bike that hasn't had this done, the grip will actually spin on top of the plastic sometimes. So that's quite annoying and you won't be able to get full throttle. So you actually want to grab a lot of glue, make a bead all the way around this seam, and that'll prevent this plastic from slipping over top of this plastic. Now just let that sit and dry until we have to do that part of the installation. Before anything, make sure the bike works immaculately, because this bike is going to be, in my opinion, the downfall of the kit itself. I've actually never had engine issues with any of these kits. What usually fails before anything is the bike itself. So make sure the bike works perfect, everything is in perfect working order. Because if it is not in perfect working order, you're going to have the ultimate speed death trap going down the middle of the road, and the last thing you want is your bike falling apart. I've actually never had any of these engines fall apart or break on me as much as I've had the bikes fall apart and break on me before the engine kits do. So priority is, before we even put anything on this thing, make sure the bike's in perfect working order, and that most importantly your brakes work, because you want to be able to stop on a dime. Here is our engine. Now this might vary depending on what kit you've ordered. This is the nicer kit. I've got 8mm mounting studs and all Allen hardware, as well as the updated cylinder. It is also a 66, just for reference. This is the engine. I'm going to be going over some of the things that you actually need to do on the engine before even putting it on the bike. So here we go. Number one, let's take the clutch cover off and make sure all the internals are properly greased. Take your 5mm Allen key, or in some people's cases a Phillips screwdriver, and unscrew this cover. So upon removal of this cover, this is what you'll see. You have this here with this little lever, and of course the bucking bar and the ball bearing. You want all of this stuff to be greased. So grab some grease, put it in here, grab some grease. You can see they've already pre-greased it, but just barely. So grease those even more, and then take this bucking bar out of here, like so, and put some grease on that, as well as in this hole here and inside of this hole. Now after re-greasing that, you can reinstall your cover. You can go ahead and unscrew this as well and put some extra grease in here because they rarely grease it, and that will also help to extend your clutches and clutch assemblies life. If you're running an expansion pipe, like my personal bike, you'll notice that this bolt here is just a slight bit longer for the chain tensioner. Now, I never actually used the chain tensioner, I'll get into that, but you can take this bolt out and actually put it over here to where an expansion pipe would mount. If you get the long one from right here and put it in here, and then take this bolt and put it in there, so just switch the two, you can get a longer bolt to hold the expansion pipe in with a nut on the back side for extra support. Alright, now we want to open the other side of the clutch cover, and inspect and grease everything in here. Now that the cover's off, we can make sure that this screw here is tightened using a Phillips, which it is. You don't want that backing off. And of course, you can see there's a little bit of grease, but grease in between these two gears here, because often they do not add enough. You don't want to overdo this, just because I've had it where grease gets in behind the gear and gets into the clutch pads, and then your clutch will start slipping. So yeah, and then you can put the cover back on and you're set. Now we're going to want to take this cover off for the electrical. Once open, we're going to be checking two things. One, that this is tight here, and that the flywheel nut is tight. I had a friend's bike just today actually. Nut actually came off and poked a hole right through the cover because they didn't check if it was tight. So grab a impact gun if you have one with a 14mm socket on it, and just give it 2 quick triggers. Or 3, whatever. Just make sure she's tight. Don't bother removing it and putting on Loctite. There's a lock washer under there, so as long as we know that's tight, that's good. And then grab your Phillips screwdriver. Of course, make sure these are tight. Sometimes they are not. Looks like in my case they're all tight. And I noticed one more thing right now actually. Looks like there's a zip tie in here or something. Let's see if we can get that out. Oh yeah. This zip tie is supposed to hold this magneto and the contents inside in place, but it has come off. But I'm just going to say it's going to be fine. I don't see anything wrong with it, and the connections here seem good, so I'm just going to continue on and put the cover back on. If you don't have an impact gun like I do, just grab a socket obviously, and just jam like a screwdriver or something into the sprocket just to hold the engine from spinning over, and then just have either you yourself or a friend help you with that, or whatever works for you the best. Very good idea to put some silicone or thread locker on this thing so that water can't get into the electrical, and make sure that is all the way in there because you do not want water getting into here and wrecking your spark system. So as possibly explained in the instructions you might have received with this kit, which are inherently useless, that's probably why you're watching this video, because you stumbled upon them and realized they are completely and utterly stupid. This white wire here is for an auxiliary power source. Not a good idea to use it, just stick with a separate power source apart from the engine's ignition system, just because you don't want to run into any loss of spark. I have zero trust in these magnetos. So what you're going to want to do actually is either wrap this with electrical tape or some heat shrink or something. Make sure this metal is covered, because if it touches anywhere on the bike or anything that's metal, it will actually ground your engine out and kill the spark to the engine, and your engine will die as it's running. So make sure this is covered and insulated from metal, or even better, just cut it right at the end there. You're going to want to make sure your top end is tight. I'd actually recommend taking this entire top end off and making sure there's no bores in the intake, exhaust, and transfer ports, just because you don't want your engine snagging a piston ring and exploding like I've had it happen in the past because I did not check. So I would recommend taking this off, but if you're a brand new builder, chances are it's probably going to be fine and you'll be okay. For a more detailed explanation of the top end removal, just go look it up on YouTube. I haven't personally made a video on it, but it's widely available and quite easy to do with some time and patience. Just grab your 14mm and just make sure all of these nuts up here are tight, because I've had it where they are very loose, or one of them's way tighter than the other one. See, that one there was actually a lot looser than the other one. And just make sure they're tight. So of course, the very last thing to do on this engine is actually make sure every single bolt that we haven't already talked about, or nut, sorry, is also tightened. So such as the intake, I haven't touched these yet, and I'm almost counting that they're going to be loose from factory. Oh yeah, barely even tight. So just make sure intake's tight. But yeah, case bolts, these two bolts here, these two bolts down here, if you can see those, down here, just every bolt you see that we haven't already talked about, make sure it is tight. And that is pretty much it for the engine. So now we're ready to put it on the bike. All right, once the engine's installed on the bike, make sure you've got Loctite in there and Loctite on there, as well as Loctite on these, and of course the other side of this. If you want to, you could put a little bit of bicycle inner tube, like cut out a square of it and put it in there, as well as on this side to reduce vibrations and prevent paint scratching. But in this case, I don't have any, and I'm just gonna say it'll be fine and not run it. I don't think it'll affect anything. I've done plenty of builds without it and it's fine. But now of course we have everybody's favorite part, the sprocket. Most importantly, you need to have your wheel true, no loose spokes, no big dents or anything. That's a no-no. Yeah, make sure your wheel is perfectly true. Remember to cut one of these, like so. Don't forget, remember to Loctite all 9 bolts before installing. Another thing to take note of is this sprocket has a bit of an angle to it, if you can see that. It's quite hard to tell, but it's leaning to the right side currently. But the teeth do have a bit of an angle to them. That is so you can adjust which side of your chain you want it to be more on, if that makes any sense. So if you want your chain further away from the tire, you put the teeth facing towards the camera, and if you want your chain closer to the tire, you face the teeth towards the tire. So in some cases the subframe might be really tight. In this case the subframe is pretty tight and the tire is pretty skinny, so I'm going to put the teeth towards the tire for maximum frame clearance. If you have an impact driver, that'll be the most helpful way to install these. Of course, make sure to go into a star pattern so you don't end up tightening one side more than the other at first. Once you get everything a bit more tight, then you can just kind of go in a circle to make it a bit easier. But at first, make sure you're going into a star pattern, and don't overuse the impact driver. Just give it a couple of these. Any more than that and you'll start stripping this. So I would suggest for the final tighten of all the bolts, use a ratchet just to make sure you can feel it out by hand and you're not stripping things. When installing your throttle, there's a little pin in there. It's completely unnecessary. Drilling a hole in your handlebar is a quite annoying process and you just don't need it. So you can go ahead, grab some needle nose pliers and pull it out. It takes a little bit of work sometimes. There it goes. Right there. So completely remove that. You do not have to drill a hole in your handlebar. As long as you tighten this enough, it is perfectly fine. When installing the throttle cable into the carburetor, make sure all of the nuts are tightened as far in as they can go, so you have as much play here as possible, so it makes the process easier. After you install it, then put the cable on this side into the twist grip. So make sure all of these are tightened all the way, then do the carburetor, and the last thing you do is the twist grip, and then extend these out to remove any play you have. One of the dumbest things these people do when they assemble these kits is not include an O-ring with the carburetor. Now, I don't know if that's intentional or if that's not intentional, but there's a little lip there made for an O-ring. In fact, I have an 11/16 OD O-ring that fits perfectly from this universal kit right here, but they don't come with an O-ring, and what you'll get is an air leak coming from here, which can cause your engine to run lean, which is not good, especially for a two-stroke. So I have this O-ring, and it is a good idea if you have access to O-rings to put one in here, and as you can see, it fits perfectly. But if you do not have an O-ring or access to O-rings, I've seen people, obviously a lot of people don't run them, so you're probably going to be fine, but it's just a safe bet to put that in there. Now this one's super important. So I find people all the time and they have these throttle linkages and throttle, twist throttle, whatever you want to call this thing, and it binds up. It's always binding up. Most important thing to do is keep your cable as straight as you can the whole way. Don't have like 90-degree bends and turns and try to zip tie it. You have to have it as free as possible. Now, what you want to do is actually spray a bunch of WD-40 in here, just like this. More the merrier. And because this is crap plastic, what's going to happen is plastic on plastic does not mesh together well, so you need something to lubricate it. So spray the crap out of that with WD-40, and any binding issues that you have will probably go away. And it's also a good idea to try to get some down the cable housing as well, just to lubricate inside of there. So don't forget to also add some WD-40 under the grip, because the grip actually is sitting on top of the bar just like this. So if there's any rust or corrosion on the bar, that'll help it, or not help it, I guess restrict it from spinning. So make sure there's a bit of WD-40 on the bar as well, and of course in here. And you can see just how nicely that's returning. Buttery smooth. When installing the clutch lever, you notice I have this ground down here. The stock clutch lever has this big, useless hole in it. I guess it looks like it's meant for another cable. Never understood why they put that there. So if you have a really tight build, like with a twist grip or something like that, or you want to like really snug the clutch up against the brake lever or something, take a grinder and just grind that right out so it's flush, just so it looks like that. You'll get way more clearance. That ridge is totally unnecessary. Just make sure you don't hit the teeth of the lock right here. Don't hit those teeth and you're good. So that'll help with clearance. Here's a better angle of an instance where you'd want to do that, so you can see my clutch is super tucked up against my shifter. Easiest way to install a grip is by spraying WD-40 onto the handlebar, just like the throttle side. Really get that soaked, as well as inside of the throttle, or sorry, the twist grip, whatever you want to call this. Put it on there, quite tight of a fit. Once you get it about 1 inch in, then take your rubber mallet, or whatever your equivalent is, dead blow. And it's on, not going anywhere. That WD-40 might be able to help if you ever need to take that off as well. When you're installing this heat shield for the clutch cable, put it on and give it a really good stretch. Extend it out. It does not matter. This does not actually act as a spring, it's just acting as a heat shield. So you actually want to stretch it out a bunch, because the way they have it as is doesn't really protect it fully. So if you stretch it a bunch, you'll get way more protection from the heat of the engine. As soon as you install your clutch cable, give it a bunch of pulls. Make sure everything works and feels smooth. And what you're going to want to do is just pull it a bunch of times, because this cable will actually end up stretching. So on your first test drive, you'll notice if you don't do this, after about a minute, the clutch will start slipping really bad and it won't lock in place with the lock up here. So yeah, what you want to do is just for a minute or two, just pull it in and out and just stretch that cable, and then go back down here and readjust it. When installing the coil onto the bike, I like to do one of two things. Number one, wind them up like this. It makes everything look cleaner. And two, instead of using the actual mounting hardware, use some zip ties and crank it as tight as you can go. And it'll actually do a better job than the hardware it comes with, because the hardware it comes with is absolute garbage. So zip ties will do a better job for you, and it'll look cleaner. Wiring is quite simple. Engine and kill switch blue into coil blue, and engine and kill switch black into coil black. Now that might translate to green depending on what kit you have. The black might be the green, but regardless, blue is your not ground, and black, or whatever color it is your ground. So just make sure all the colors are matching. So there's 2 blues into 1 blue and 2 blacks into 1 black. Now, I don't care what people say. I have had nothing but problems with the exhaust or muffler, whatever you want to call this thing, constantly unscrewing from here and falling out of the engine. So I have recently, in the past couple months, even past year, just used red Loctite, which is the highest strength it can get, really. Red Loctite on these 2 bolts, and somehow they still manage to come out. So don't use, if you have red Loctite, use that. If you don't have it and you only have blue, just load it up with blue and I'm sure you'll be fine. But for the exhaust bolts, I always use red Loctite because they will vibrate out, so you will have to watch that. All right, gas tank related stuff. So first of all, obviously make sure this has Loctite or some sort of sealer or something on there, because it is very important this does not leak gas. And of course, don't forget to put the little rubber O-ring in here so this doesn't leak. Second of all, the stock filters 9 out of 10 times for me leak, so I always usually get a replacement filter or just run no filter. So do keep that in mind, that that filter might leak, so just bypass it, don't use it, or come up with a different solution if you want to filter your fuel. All right, so if you have a bike like this Infinity with all of the cables on the top tube, on the very top of it like this, not underneath or underneath this tube, but on the very top just like this, you'll notice your gas tank will have to mount over top of that. Now that's going to be a big issue, so what you're going to want to do is cut out a little piece of pipe or PVC pipe or whatever you got lying around, about 1 or 1.5 inch thick, whatever's going to fit on the inside of that kind of bump of this tank perfectly. And then take some electrical tape or whatever you got and just wrap that around, and that'll be a perfect spacer for these. So the cables, you can see, can still move freely, but the tank is solidly mounted onto the frame just because there's a spacer. So yeah, just remember, if you've got cables on the top of your frame, just remember to make a spacer so that the gas tank can sit on something and not bind against the cable. So this is that one special tool you'll need, the chain breaker. You can find this at Walmart or anywhere that carries other power sports equipment things, I assume. And this is actually meant for a bicycle, but it happens to fit the 415 chain that this thing comes with perfectly. So I'm gonna go ahead and break the chain and I'll show you how tight it should be. So looking at the chain here, we can see the tensioner is not too close to the sprocket and not too far back. And the adjustment is right in the middle. So that's where you want it, just in case the chain loosens or tightens a bit. You have a little bit of play there. And you got about 1 inch, maybe 1.5 inches up and down. That's just about perfect. Sometimes if your sprocket isn't perfectly true, you might have to go a little looser than you want to, just because it goes up and down or side to side and adjust the tension, but right about that much is actually what you want. So yeah, this is the chain guide I was talking about. As you can see, it kind of doesn't really, yeah, it doesn't really fit there. That's why I never run them. I've had a chain fly off and it literally doesn't even get anywhere close to your feet. So I'd say those are even more dangerous having them on than off, and they make a lot of noise. So yeah, don't run the chain guard. So yeah, that's it. That's basically all the tips and tricks I've got for when you're installing your brand new motorized bicycle engine kit. If there's any tips I forgot, let me know down in the comments or suggest them to me. If there's enough of them, I might make a part 2. I'm sure there is some that I've probably forgotten. Thank you all for watching this video, and please subscribe if you like this. You can go down into the description. I have an Instagram page for these bicycles if you like this stuff. So yeah, consider following that if you like what you're seeing here. Anyways, that's all I got time for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.